Yo, what's going on? Welcome back, Facebuster Wrestling Podcast, talking this past weekend of premium live events back to back. What a fun, exciting weekend it was. It far exceeded my expectations. Both NXT Battleground and Night of Champions were entertaining. They were good. They were fun to watch. Night of Champions in particular, the crowd really, again, added to the excitement level of the show. Certainly not Backlash levels, but it was up there. It was still good. The Night of Champions card, a little bit more balanced out than Backlash was. I think they, again, as I mentioned, learned a short-term lesson. They didn't burn the crowd out in the middle of the show. So the energy levels were balanced. They stayed amped up throughout the entirety of this card. And it was just a fun watch. On the weekend, prediction-wise, Night of Champions, I went 5 out of 7. NXT Battleground, I went 5 out of 6. 10 out of 13 overall for the weekend, not too shabby. I had Becky Lynch to beat Trish, that did not go through. I had Bianca to retain against Asuka, that was a failure. But the rest I got accurately. Rhea Ripley defeated and retained against Natalya. Gunther retained against Mustafa Ali. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens retained against Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa due to some bloodline fuckery. We'll get into that in a little bit. And Brock Lesnar defeated Cody Rhodes, which will ultimately lead to a rubber match. And Seth Rollins defeating AJ Styles for the World Heavyweight Championship. So let's get right into it with one of the matches that I fucked up. That would be Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus. I picked Becky. First of all, let's speak on the quality of this matchup. I was pleasantly surprised at how good this match actually was. It played out really well on television. And Trish Stratus has really, at least in this match, elevated herself back to visibly putting on a good match. I don't think that had been the case in her appearances in her return to this point. A couple of the matches were a little bit sloppy, some botches here and there, but these two really brought it for this match, and it was fun to watch. Becky Lynch, over the course of the last couple of weeks, was really handing it to Trish in the microphone department. She was leveling Trish with some grade A promos. And Trish came into this match and really held her own against Becky Lynch. Of course, it didn't last the entire time because as Becky Lynch began to get the upper hand, Trish Stratus unleashed her secret weapon, which turned out to be Zoe Stark, who was camping underneath the ring. Zoe ends up taking out Becky Lynch with a Z360 on the outside, throwing her back in the ring, all while the ref is distracted. Trish takes advantage of it. Finishes up Becky Lynch for the win. I like that there was some added layers to this, that they got Zoe involved, and I like this as a way to elevate Zoe Stark right from the get-go. We all know she's fantastic in the ring, but her skills on the mic leave a little to be desired. So elevating her with sort of a mentor that she can tag along with, and somebody of Trish's status, it's just a good way to get Zoe elevated immediately. They obviously really like Zoe. They want to do something with her. This is the perfect way to elevate her right out of the gate. So I like where they're going with this. Obviously, this is not going to be the last of this particular rivalry. I wonder if Becky maybe finds somebody to watch her back. But solid match. Also, clearly, I'm not going in order of the way that the card was structured when this event played out. I'm going by the order that the card was originally presented. So, we're just going over results. It doesn't really matter, but I just wanted to point that out. Raw Women's Championship, Bianca Belair against Asuka. This was the second of two matches that I got wrong. I picked Bianca to retain. I had said I eventually want Asuka to be the one to take this championship because I want a venomous heel Asuka as champion in a rivalry with a face Io as the next rivalry for this championship. But they went ahead and did it. I figured they'd do it eventually. I didn't think it would be this night, but they did it this night. I think they're starting to realize, or have been realizing, that some of the fan base is starting to not react to Bianca in a positive light. I think a lot of that may have culminated at Backlash when Io Sky was wildly cheered and Bianca was kind of booed a little bit. And I've been talking about it lately. I've grown tired and a little bit. I feel like Bianca's current shtick has gotten a little bit stale. Apparently, other people feel that way. So they have gone ahead and put this championship on Asuka. I like it. I'm glad that I got this one wrong. I wanted this to happen. I just didn't think it was going to happen on this particular night. But they do it tonight anyway. The way Asuka won this was, I think, unique and solid. And please, I might be wrong. I've never seen mist utilized in this way before. So originally, Bianca dodged the first mist attempt. The hot sauce mist that Asuka has been experimenting with. So Asuka, in all of her brilliance, decides while she has the opportunity to mist her hand and spray this Frank's hot sauce mist all over her hand. And Belair goes for a KOD, and while she's got Asuka up, Asuka rubs her fingers all over Bianca's eyes and essentially gets her with the mist that way. That's enough to take Belair out and for Asuka to get the pin. Clearly not how Asuka typically uses the mist to get over on her opponents, but this time, just something different. I like it. It's creative. I don't know if it's been done before by anyone else who ever utilized mist. Maybe the Great Muta has done it in the past. I don't know. But I've never seen that before. I thought it was unique. I thought it was cool and new. It was creative. But just a very different way for that misting situation to work out. I liked it, especially since they made the decision to introduce the idea that Asuka had been experimenting with the chili pepper mist, which when I originally heard it, I thought was really weird and just kind of strange, but they made it work. It made this make sense. I didn't think twice about it, and I enjoyed the ending of this match. And I am super glad, not only for Asuka, but I'm glad for Bianca too, because I think Bianca is smart enough to know when something isn't really working anymore. I think she needs a change in her character. I don't know if that's like a full-on switch up. It'll probably be a slow roll into if we ever see Bianca as a heel, but I think she's smart enough to know that something had to change. So I'm happy for her to dodge the bullet of becoming like a female John Cena or a female Bron Breakker at that. I'm happy with this outcome. Asuka's your new Raw Women's Champion. I wonder if they're ever going to address the Raw champion being on SmackDown, the SmackDown champion being on the Raw. Maybe that's something that comes next. We'll see how that goes. The SmackDown Women's Championship. Rhea Ripley versus Natalya. I'm not going to say much about this. Because why? It's Rhea Ripley won. We all knew that was going to happen. If you thought Natalya was going to have any sort of shot in this, I'd like you to reevaluate your whole entire life. Enough said. Intercontinental Championship. Gunther against Mustafa Ali. Again, like the previous one. Look, this was actually a good showing from Ali. I think this elevated him. We all knew he wasn't going to win, but his showing in this match, I think, really did a solid for him as far as making him look stronger than he looked before. This will elevate Ali. This will certainly earn him more prestige among fans, I believe, that watched this match. We all knew he was going to lose. I honestly thought it was going to be more of a squash. Like I had said on the prediction show, a couple of hope spots, which they did, but he put up more of a fight than I thought they would allow him to. Either way, not much to say about this. Gunther retains. Here's where things get interesting. And I'm actually going to go a little bit out of order for my notes because I want to save the more interesting for last. World Heavyweight Championship, Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles. I think most of us had Seth Rollins winning this. Really solid match, nothing too extreme. I originally said Seth Rollins, unless it was due to a heel turn by AJ Styles. The only hope that I gave to AJ Styles in this match was if AJ Styles and the OC turned heel. Clearly that did not happen. Seth Rollins won. Not a whole lot to say about this. Good match, solid match, but I really think we all figured Seth Rollins would be the face of Monday Night Raw and this new championship moving forward. So let's move on from there. Brock Lesnar versus Cody Rhodes. So Cody Rhodes with the titanium cast on his broken arm. Still not enough to beat Brock Lesnar. As I predicted, Brock Lesnar beat the shit out of him, and he did not submit him. He made him pass out, but that was enough to qualify for a victory. But they sort of gave Cody Rhodes the Lex Luger steel plate offense. If anybody's old enough like me to remember Lex Luger having the metal plate in his forearm, which I think a lot of people still think is kayfabe, but that was actually real. He did have a steel plate in his arm due to a motorcycle accident. But that plate allowed him to inflict more damage on opponents when he hit them with it. Well, that was kind of the angle they started working with as far as Cody Rhodes goes in this match. He utilized the titanium cast to inflict some serious blows on Brock Lesnar, but in the end, not enough. Brock Lesnar overpowers him, puts him in the Kimura lock a couple of times, and just beat the complete and utter shit out of him. And this, as we've seen following this match on Monday Night Raw, will probably lead to a third and final match between these two. I think they are doing this to sort of extend the wait time on Cody Rhodes getting back into the title chase. They want to sort of prolong this as long as they can, because I really do think they want Cody Rhodes to ultimately win championship gold at WrestleMania, which is a long ways away from now, but they're going to find every which way to put adversity in front of this guy, and that's going to be the bulk of the story when it finally blows up and he finally wins gold, is that look at all the adversity he faced, look at all he had to go through, a torn pec, a broken arm, Brock Lesnar, this and that, everything else that's going to lead up to the point where Cody inevitably wins major WWE gold. It's part of the story. It's the building blocks of the Cody Rhodes story, of him finishing his story, as he's put it. They want to make it as full of roadblocks and speed bumps as possible to further exaggerate the babyface overcoming everything to finally fulfill his dream. And it'll be worth it. It's going to seem like it's dragging on and on. They're going to have to find new ways to keep this interesting and prolonging this, but I really do believe that's what they're trying to do. Keep him out of the chase, find ways to divert his attention to other things, and then ultimately, on the road to WrestleMania, bring him back into the chase where he inevitably wins it at the biggest show of the year, WrestleMania. But the crown jewel of the night, no pun intended, or is it? The Undisputed Tag Team Championships. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. What did I tell you? I didn't believe WWE or the Bloodline for a fucking second. Yeah, the Usos aren't going to be there. Sure. Of course. Yeah, whatever you say. Yeah, okay. The Usos won't be there, so I won't expect them at all. Of course they're going to be there. What do you take me for? Come on. They spent the last couple of weeks leading up this show really pounding it home. Well, it's just going to be Roman and Solo and Paul Heyman in Saudi Arabia. The Usos aren't coming. They're not going to be there. They're not making the trip. Sure. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. As I mentioned in the prediction show, didn't believe a lick of that. And of course, who shows up but the Usos? Oh my God, the Usos were there. What? You said they weren't going to be there, though. How did they get there? What the hell? Those tricky Uso brothers. How deceptive. Boy, they really pulled a fast one on us. Of course they're there. And of course they're going to fuck it up. But remember, as I was talking about leading up to this, I was growing concerned that they really needed to do something. This whole thing, they've been dragging this out almost to borderline stagnation. The tension and the teased dissension in the bloodline, they kept teasing that. Two or one or all of these guys had problems with each other, but they were really at a point where they needed to do something about that. And I voiced my concern about that on the last episode. Do something. We need to see something happen. It can't just be, oh, now Roman has beef with Solo. Well, now Solo has beef with the Usos maybe, and they're looking at each other kind of side-eyed. Oh, look at that. Obviously there's some problems, but whatever could it be? How's this going to blow off? Well, do something. Make something happen. And they did. Finally. So we see the Usos come out towards the end of this match in an attempt to surprise the tribal chief, I guess, and make things better by helping him win these tag team championships. But instead, they accidentally superkick Solo Sikoa, which, to this point, there really hadn't been any physicality between those guys. And then Roman Reigns flips his lid and, sort of bitch slaps Jimmy and shoves Jay. And Jimmy, out of nowhere, super kicks the shit out of Roman Reigns. Finally, yes, exactly. This is what needed to happen. Something like this needed to happen. There needed to be some intentional physicality within the members of the bloodline. And I like the way that they did it, because all of us would expect the person super kicking Roman Reigns to be Jay, right? Out of all the members of the bloodline, out of either of the Usos, my head would automatically go to, it's got to be Jay. He's had the most tension with Roman, but they sort of, over the last couple of weeks, recently have implemented more tension between Roman and Jimmy. And instead of it just sort of developing, and then leading to nothing, as it's sort of been with Jay and Roman over the past couple months, actually, this was a shorter build and a much quicker payoff. In that Jimmy was like, I'm fucking done, dude. Fuck you. And he super kicked him. Not once, but twice, after Jay is like, what did you just do, you idiot? Jimmy's like, I'm doing what you should have done a long time ago. Super kicked him again. And then they make a beeline for the exit, as Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn take advantage and take the win. I'm relieved. I'm glad to see something finally happen with this. There had been accidental physicality between members of the bloodline, a la the double super kick on Solo that very night. But this was the first bit of physicality with intent behind it. This wasn't an accident. This was Jimmy being fed up, and ultimately this obviously is him severing that relationship. It's over. There's no way the Usos continue on in the bloodline. I'm really interested to see how this Friday goes, because that's when the celebration for Roman Reigns' 1,000 days as champion is being held. And originally, before this whole thing at Night of Champions took place, Roman made it clear that he wants the Usos to be there. So something's got to happen Friday night on SmackDown. But this is exactly what I had been hoping for. We needed something different. We needed a new level to this. And this, by all means, is certainly a new level to this whole storyline. Interested to see how it goes. It was a fun scenario, a fun circumstance, very entertaining. A lot of people were shocked. I myself was shocked. I did not think that they were going to pull something off like this immediately. As I said, I knew the Usos were going to be there, and I predicted that they would fuck it up somehow and further piss off Roman Reigns. I had no idea that there was going to be this level of escalation in this story. So, pleasantly surprised with that. And we'll see how they handle it moving forward on SmackDown. So, overall, prediction-wise, 5 out of 7. Not too bad. The two that I got wrong, I'm actually happy that I got wrong, just based on the outcome of those two matches and the implications of those results moving forward. Of course, Becky losing to Trish with the sudden elevation of Zoe Stark is nice. And Asuka, at least prematurely, to my predictions, defeating Bianca and becoming the new Raw Women's Champion. I'll take both of those losses gladly, because it makes things more interesting. New storylines to be had from those two matches. Again, very fun night, very hot crowd, just a very fun watch. I wholeheartedly enjoyed Night of Champions. Moving on to NXT Battleground, a really good, fun show. 5 out of 6 prediction-wise for this. Quickly going over those, I had Ilja to defeat Dijak. I did not have Noam Dar retaining his Heritage Cup. I thought Dragon Lee would take that from him. I had Wesley to retain against Tyler Bate and Joe Gacy. I had Gallus to retain against the Creed brothers. I had Carmelo Hayes to retain against Bron Breakker. And I had Tiffany Stratton winning the NXT Women's Championship in her match with Lyra Valkyria. But getting right into it, what was probably the match of the weekend we'll start off with. Ilja Dragunov versus Dijak in a last man standing match. This match, I'll probably watch at least one or two more times. Man, I've really loved Ilja since his days in NXT UK. I don't know how many times this guy has to have one of these sorts of matches. He's had so many of these matches where a lot of people will say it's a superstar-making match. This is the match that makes him a superstar. The thing about Ilja Dragunov is he has had a handful of those at this point, especially with Gunther. But the dude has been doing work since he has been televised, and I'm talking about back on NXT UK as well. This is how you put on a match with weapons involved. And I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit more later before I end this episode, but this is how you do it. Other promotions should take notes. Hell, everybody else within WWE who will ever have a weaponized match in the future, take notes. This was a lesson in the art of storytelling in the ring with weapons and pain and agony. What a masterful showing by these two. Holy shit. Easily a match of the year candidate. This one was astonishingly good. I knew it would be a good match. I didn't think it would be this fucking good. These two put on a performance. This wasn't just a wrestling match. This was a performance. And the guts and the fortitude of Dragunov taking those shots from Dijak, the melon-sized welt that formed on his arm, the dude is hard as fuck. There's no getting around that. This guy is a beast. Dijak too, but all of my flowers got to go to Dragunov. Everything, the reactions, the selling, the facial expressions, the intensity, the everything. What a absolute star-making performance this was. And again, he's had several of those, but this is just the most recent one. This dude deserves far more props than anybody has given him since his time in NXT and NXT UK. What an incredible match. And again, props to Dijak too. This guy is still wiping the stains of T-Bar off of himself and reestablishing himself as a different superstar. I've said it before, I think the man of justice thing is a little bit tacky, but as far as in-ring performance goes, top-notch. Great. This was reminiscent of the sorts of performances he would put on with Keith Lee back when he was Dominik Dijakovic. Fucking fantastic. Both of these guys deserve so much more after this. Either way, Ilja takes the win in what it was an instant classic in my eyes. What a fucking fantastic match. A masterclass in weaponized matches. And again, I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit further at the end of the show. Next up, again, this is not the structure of the card. This is just the structure of my notes, not the actual order that they took place in. But Noam Dar versus Dragon Lee in a British Rounds rules match for the NXT Heritage Cup. Very happy to see this format back on television. I enjoyed it on NXT UK back when it was a thing. Good showing from both of these guys. In my predictions, I originally stated I think this would have a little something to do with the cornermen for each of these competitors. I assumed that Nathan Frazier was going to be the cornerman for Dragon Lee. And I thought, I touched on Oro Mensah being talked to by Noam Dar in the back and sort of blowing him off. So I assumed he was going to find somebody else. Maybe Lash Legend would come out and be his corner woman. All in all, that sort of ended up being true. Oro Mensah did come out after the first round to help out and be Noam Dar's cornerman, but eventually we'd see Lash Legend as well, and also Jakara Jackson, who has also been appearing at the side of Lash Legend in backstage segments. We haven't really seen much of Jakara Jackson, much to learn about her as a character. We've seen Oro Mensah before, he's been a face, but He apparently has turned heel, and this whole crew, I guess, is a faction now. And they helped him with Lash Legend coming out and hitting Dragon Lee with the spit bucket, which was ultimately enough for Noam Dar to get the final pin on Dragon Lee. Very interesting group, Noam Dar and 3 people we haven't really seen much of. Lash Legend we saw a lot of when 2.0 started. She had the Lashing Out with Lash talk show, I think is what it was called. Oro Mensa was originally Oliver Carter in NXT UK before he came over and debuted as Oro Mensa in NXT. He held gold. He was a NXT tag team champion with Ashton Smith. We haven't seen much of him on TV lately. He debuted a few months ago with relatively little fanfare, and that sort of tapered off, and he kind of went away. But he is back. He is now a heel, and he is part of this odd motley crew of people we haven't seen much of lately. Not to mention Noam Dar, who's only been back on television for maybe a month now. Interesting to see. We'll see how that goes, but Noam Dar retains his Heritage Cup, and we have a new faction in NXT. We had Wesley defending his North American Championship against Joe Gacy and Tyler Bate. Pretty straightforward match, not a whole lot going on. It was a good match, but they wanted Wesley to retain, and I figured it was for record-breaking purposes, and he indeed has become, after this victory, the longest reigning North American champion in NXT history. Again, as I've mentioned before, it seems like WWE is kind of on a roll with wanting to reset records as of late, what with Bianca Belair, Roman Reigns, Wes Lee, Gunther. Everybody's sort of holding titles for record periods of time at this point. Like they want to reset the record books and add more modern, current era stars as the new record holders. So Wesley retains. Only weird thing about this match, Gacy came out wearing what looked like a diaper, and that is his ring gear. That's just his ring gear. It just looks like he's wearing a diaper. I liked Joe Gacy much better when he was wearing like Baron Corbin-esque Olive Garden waiter attire, just the button down and the dress pants. That seemed on on Baron Corbin it looked terrible. He really looked like a Applebee's server. But Joe Gacy looked oddly menacing in that getup for some reason. Just doing like the handsprings and shit. He just looked a little bit more villainous in that attire than, say, Baron Corbin. I like that much better. The weird big diaper, not a big fan of that. But other than that, pretty straightforward. Wesley retains, and it looks like he'll have a prominent free agent from the WWE challenging him next. Moving on to Gallus defending their NXT Tag Team Championships against the Creed Brothers. Another kind of straightforward match, decent match. It all came down to Ava getting involved, as I think we all kind of predicted that Ava would come down to balance things out with Ivy Nile being at ringside, create some sort of distraction. Of course, there's some brewing tension between the Creeds and Schism and Ava and Ivy Nile. And I originally predicted, I thought either Stax would get involved or Tony D would find himself out of custody and would make his way to ringside and have some sort of effect on this match. He did not. He is still apparently under arrest. And Stax kept his word to the Creeds and did not come down to interfere. Again, I've mentioned this before. I think the Creeds need something extra. I don't know if they're missing Roderick Strong, but Ivy Nile alone isn't really doing it. They're still super green, right? And they just need a little bit more work. I think they need something. I don't know what it is. I could speculate. But yeah, Gallus retains, and I guess we'll probably see more tension brewing between Ava and Ivy Nile and the Creeds and Schism. And I'm going to talk about the NXT Championship next because, personally, the NXT Women's Championship match was my main event. I want to save that for last. So, Carmelo Hayes versus Bron Breakker. Carmelo Hayes in his homecoming match in Lowell, Massachusetts. Gets all the love from the crowd coming out. Bron Breakker comes out with his new heel beard. And as predicted, very physical match. I expected this to go a little bit longer. It actually felt a little bit short. But again, very physical match. Carmelo Hayes ends up retaining against Bron Breakker. Decent match, not over the top, exciting, no spears through the stage area, nothing like that. Just a physical, straightforward, pretty clean match. Carmelo retains. And, this really begs the question, what is next for Bron Breakker? If not another rematch against Carmelo Hayes, where else does he go? Does he challenge Wes Lee for the North American Championship? Not sure where he goes from here, but a lot of people are saying a call-up to the main roster. I'm not sure how much sense that would be. What with the draft having just taken place, how would they get him up there? Would they say that he negotiates a new free agent status and he can go to Raw or SmackDown? I'm not so sure continuing this rivalry is a good idea. I imagine Carmelo remains champion for a while, and I can't imagine Bron Breakker losing too many big matches without losing some credibility. They've got to have something else planned for him. Eager to see what that is. I want Bron to continue developing in NXT. Again, he's very good for how long he's been doing this, but he's still very new. He's still got a lot to learn. I still think he has a lot of developing as far as his heel character goes. He's done a great job with it to this point. I've really enjoyed heel Bron. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the minority in that opinion, but I've enjoyed it much more than his best points of him being a face. I am concerned about where he goes from here. What is next for Bron Breakker? That is yet to be seen. We know what's next for Carmelo Hayes after this episode of NXT that just aired. Obviously, he will be challenged by free agent Baron Corbin, which is a very surprising but a very strange matchup. We'll see how that goes. It's sort of becoming clear how they're going to utilize the mass of free agents that were left undrafted and declared free agents. We also saw Mustafa Ali tonight. I like how they're utilizing that. It's not just guys that are they didn't have any idea what to do with. They had an idea all along, actually. They're going to utilize them across the board, some of them making surprise appearances in NXT like we saw tonight. And I think that's a cool way to deal with it, instead of just having a pool of men and women floating about that are just randomly free agents, and maybe we'll see them someday, and maybe we won't. Cool way to integrate the free agents. I actually like it quite a bit. So, moving on, my personal main event of the night, the NXT Women's Championship, Lyra Valkyria against Tiffany Stratton. I'll be honest, I enjoyed this match, but it was a little botchy. And let's be clear, while Lyra has been in the business for a while, Tiffany Stratton has not. She is still very new. As good as she has been to this point, she is still very new. She has a lot to learn. She's even admitted it herself. So I don't want to be too hard on this match. I enjoyed this match for what it was. I'm glad Tiffany won the belt. I think she was the most obvious choice. There were a couple points in the match where they seemed to botch it up a little bit. I imagine it's more on Tiffany than it was on Lyra. But there were a couple moments where they went for a spot. It didn't look like, I think Tiffany was ready to take the spot, so they sort of had to reset and run it back and redo it, and it was glaringly obvious when that happened. Again, it sucks, and it doesn't look good, but being that Tiffany is still so green, as good as she has gotten, I'm not concerned about it. It's something I can let go very easily. This isn't two veterans fucking stuff up. This is Lyra, who I don't place any of the blame on her, really. It probably due to Tiffany missing something. But I believe she is still worthy of the championship. She has a lot of work to do, but she improves every time we see her. So this will be something that we won't remember for very long. I'd like to point back to, if you remember when Charlotte debuted on the main roster, she was awful on the mic. She was a very bad promo, and that is because she let the fans get into her head. Every time she would come out and start talking on the microphone, Fans would chant at her, they would give her the what treatment, and she became visibly frustrated each time, to the point where she was flubbing words and almost unable to continue with whatever she was saying. How long did that last? Now Charlotte Flair is one of the best in the ring and one of the best on the microphone. So even the best, when they're still new to something, will fuck up a little bit. And that Charlotte is now the Charlotte we have today. Tiffany Stratton, I believe, is in that tier of competitor and performers. She will learn from this mistake. She will get over it. She will have a short memory as far as that goes, and she'll move on and become better for it and because of it. I'm not concerned, but I also didn't want to gloss over the fact that the match that I thought was going to be the absolute best of the night turned out to be a little bit wonky. But either way, Tiffany wins, and I'm thrilled for her. I'm glad that they see how good Tiffany is right now, and they're willing to put all of their chips in on her and give her the belt. They could have easily gone with a more proven veteran in Lyra, and I would have been just as happy because these two, as I've said ad nauseum, are two of my pillars of the future of the women's division in NXT and the WWE overall. So I'm just happy this was the match that we got. I'm glad that it wasn't Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez as I had feared that it would be. And Tiffany is a deserving champion. We'll only see her get better from here. So that was NXT Battleground. Very fun show. A lot of matches that were kind of just straightforward, clean matches, but nothing wrong with that. They were quality matches. One being my personal match of the weekend, that being Dragunov versus Dijak, which I think, again, is a match of the year candidate. And it was a fun watch. 5 out of 6 prediction-wise. That puts me at 10 out of 13 overall for the weekend. Just a capper on a fun, quality weekend of premium live event WWE programming. Now, I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on what I said earlier on Ilja and Dijak putting on a masterclass in weaponized matches and performance and storytelling and psychology and selling and the whole gamut. After this show, I caught the last 2 matches of Double or Nothing from AEW, and I'm not here to shit on AEW. Let me preface this by saying this. I want to be a fan of AEW. I want to like AEW. And in fact, I did. From its inception up to maybe around when the pandemic started. And that is no fault of their own. They really were building momentum heading into the period where the pandemic really, unfortunately, took a shit on them. Now, the pandemic's been over for a while, and I've given AEW chance after chance. Trust me, I've tried watching it over and over again. And there have been points where I got invested again, particularly when Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole debuted on the same fucking night. CM Punk comes back. I really thought, okay, well they've got something here. They can't fuck this up. You know the story. Look, as wrestling fans, we all win if there are 2 promotions doing very well. I really want AEW to be good. I want to like AEW. I want it to be a good program. I want it to be a good promotion. They have tons of talent. They just are not, in my opinion, properly utilized. The booking, despite the Booker of the Year awards, it's not good, man. They get some things right. Yes, sometimes it can be entertaining and quality, but for the most part, I find myself just not being interested because I find the storytelling to lack a ton of any sort of substance whatsoever, any sort of continuity whatsoever. I want AEW to be good because, again, as wrestling fans, we all win if there are 2 good promotions going at it head-to-head. If the AEW promotion is good, the WWE promotion is forced to be better. We've seen this historically with WWE and WCW. For the longest time, WWE didn't have to give a shit about WCW because WCW was bland and kind of garbage. It was boring. There was nothing to it. But then we saw the turn. We saw NWO form. We saw the Outsiders come in. We saw Hogan turn heel and join the NWO and start the NWO. We saw that whole thing take place. Then the ratings war, the Monday Night Wars. They made each other better. They forced each other to be better because they were duking it out for viewership. We, as wrestling fans, were perpetually winning in that time period because we had two promotions forcing each other to put out quality content. I, as a wrestling fan, as a WWE fan, can easily watch WWE through the hard times, through the dull times, through the shit times, and there have been plenty of them. Extended periods of those times, may I add, where it was absolute trash. But it is easier for me to remain a viewer of WWE even in those times because I always have hope. You know why? Because I've been emotionally invested in the product for so long. I've been a fan since I was a kid. I've been watching even before the Monday Night Wars. It's easy for me to keep by WWE and keep watching it when it was absolute dog shit. Because I had been on this train, on this bandwagon for so long, since the early 90s. For AEW, I can't do that because it's only been around for a short period of time in contrast to WWE, and I don't have that sort of emotional investment in it. So I don't find myself attached to it in the same way. I can more easily turn it off and not have hope for it to get better. But as a wrestling fan, modern day, I want it to be good, and it has that potential to be good, but it's just not there right now, and it hasn't been there consistently for a very long time. But please believe me, I want AEW to be good, because if AEW gets better, and they start pushing and gaining momentum, and utilizing their talent correctly, and forming competent and interesting storylines with substance, they start pushing the rating, they start becoming a threat. And then, you know what happens as a result, as a reaction to that? WWE has to get better. It has to get more interesting. They have to start trying harder to entertain us. And in turn, that will force AEW to want to be even better. And that, in turn, will force WWE to want to be even better. And then AEW has to get better. You see the cycle that we should all desire? The strange warfare online between WWE fans and AEW fans, I don't understand. Because perhaps maybe the people that I'm seeing as far as commentary goes are diehards of one or the other. But I consider myself a wrestling fan. Yeah, I'm a little bit more loyal to WWE because I've just been on that train for so much longer. But that doesn't take away from me wanting AEW to be good. I wanted TNA Impact to be good for the longest time back in the day. I wanted them to push WWE to be better. That never really took hold. So since then, the only real potential competition has been AEW. And they started off really well, and then it just pittered out. I want them both to be good. I want to be a fan of both. I want them both to be better as a result of the other. But until then, I'll keep giving it a chance here and there. And maybe if Punk comes back, maybe that'll get the ball rolling, but the more I hear, that seems less and less likely. And honestly, if he does come back, is it going to be awkward? If they have to split the brand to accommodate that? Like, how awkward is that going to be? The bickering, the tension, I don't know. But anyway, I caught the last two matches of Double or Nothing this weekend after Battleground. And look, the Four Pillars match, it was what it was. I'm not really talking about that. What I'm talking about is the Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club. Full of superstars who should be, involved in amazing storylines. Some of the most talented competitors in all of professional wrestling. The Bucks, Omega, Danielson, Claudio, Moxley. How could you do that incorrectly? Unfortunately, a car wreck like this is how you do it incorrectly. The disappointment, man, it was almost like watching what would be a cartoon version of a hardcore match. You know how cool that sounds on paper? Just an all-out weaponized brawl between the Elite and the BCC? That looks real good on paper. That looks like it could be real good on paper. But what I saw on the screen was just a fucking mess, dude. And this goes back to why I put so much praise behind Dijak and Dragunov and what they did in half the time, maybe a quarter of the time that it took for the Arena Anarchy match or whatever to take place. What Dragunov and Dijak did in such a small amount of time, in contrast to what a fucking handful of some of the most talented competitors in professional wrestling did over the period of like a half an hour, is mind-blowing. The absolute masterclass of a performance by two guys in NXT. Just put those two matches side by side and watch them, compare and contrast, and really use logic and common sense to judge the both of them. And with honesty and being unbiased, which one told the better story? If you say the Anarchy car wreck, I don't know what to say to you. I mean, I'm not faulting anybody for liking that, but to not give the win between those two to Dijak and Dragunov, I don't know, man. Like, maybe look, I consider myself a minimalist in real life off of the microphone, and maybe I'm a bit of a minimalist as far as being a wrestling fan goes, but the simplicity mixed with the brutality and the storytelling and the psychology and the selling displayed in Dragunov versus Dijak compared to all those attributes displayed in the Anarchy whatever the fuck, miles better. Off the charts. What I saw in AEW was comical. What I saw on NXT was almost beautiful. It's like comparing a classic opera to Looney Tunes. I don't know. That's just how I feel. And again, man, like, trust me, I want AEW to be good, and I pray that it improves and lives up to its potential. Of all the guys and girls on that roster, there is so much potential. And I feel like somebody needs to get in Tony Khan's ear and, like, straighten them up a little bit. Show them how to do this. There's got to be somebody out there. If not Jeff Jarrett, if not Arn Anderson, I don't know who it would be or who it might be or who it can be. But for the sake of two wrestling promotions improving themselves because of each other and in turn entertaining us much more, I hope something better comes of it. Because what I saw was not it, my dude. That was hot fucking garbage. And I'm sorry. I like most of those guys in that match, but that was fucking rough. That was fucking rough. I imagine MJF is crossing days off the calendar, waiting for 2024. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's not alone in that sentiment. Either way, fun weekend of wrestling. Two very fun premium live events. We'll get into much more next time. We'll talk about what's happened this week. I know Raw and NXT have already taken place by the time that I put this episode out, but we will get into that on our more regularly scheduled day or area of time next week. Yeah, AEW, come on, fix it, please, on behalf of wrestling fans worldwide. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about this weekend in wrestling. It was a fun one, unless you're an AEW fan. Just kidding. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.